Okay, so Jungrown made this video yesterday. I popped in and stream a couple of times with him, talked to him a little bit about the build, some of the things that I would like have adjusted and whatnot. So now that he's actually released a video, I want to just go through it step by step because it is almost identical to my Burning Witch cast on crit volatile dead build. And so I feel like there's a lot to give and take. There are some things that need some tweakage. So we're gonna go and we're gonna react. It's gonna be good. He has epic editing skills, by the way. I have none. Ready?
This is the most well-rounded, straight-up strongest build
Fact.
I've played since the Herald Stacker I ran during Delirium League.
Fact,
It's a
by
volatile
the
dead,
way.
detonate dead, self-ignite, double cast on crit necromancer, and I've put about 50 exalts into this build, and we're looking at something about 7k hybrid ES in life, almost 200% movement speed, around 15 to 25 million DPS after the initial ramp, permanent instant leech, permanent fortify, permanent endurance charges, permanent all charges actually, maximum block, and of course incredible clear and coverage.
I gotta say, going through all of those stats, some people might not believe it, but it is actually true. You have all of these things, and I love it. That's one of the things I love about this build. It is very much an all-rounder kind of build. You want one character to just kind of do everything. It might not be the best at any one given thing, but if you just want one character, then like, go nuts.
Obviously, this is an all-content viable build, and there's only one major downside to this. It will fry your GPU.
Fact.
So because this iteration of
You can change your networking mode to predictive instead of lockstep. Most people default to lockstep, and 99% of the time, that's where you want to be. Predictive mode does help with the lag. But yeah, this is very, very GPU intensive.
Double Cock is so cracked, I'm gonna actually give you a proper video guide this time. It's roughly based on the staff Double Cock I finished on last league, so you will see some repetition. So the core items here are Martyr of Innocence, Replica Restless Defense, and Eye of Innocence. So my main setup is a Cyclone cast on crit with Desecrate and Detonate Dead. And in short, basically what happens is when I hit an enemy, I deal fire damage to myself through Eye of Innocence. Now this fire damage can self-ignite because I'm using Replica Reckless Defense, and then this damage that I'm taking also triggers Vengeance from my Martyr of Innocence, which then triggers a cast on Critical Strike because Vengeance is an attack. So I have a secondary cast on Critical Strike setup, and this is where my Volatile Dead sits. Within my staff, it does have to be linked, and it gives me something like 50% more damage, and it helps my clear.
Okay. I have to say it, Jungrown. You're not getting 50% more damage. I'm sorry. So what's happening, and I've said this a couple of times, is when you're proccing your initial cast on crit with the Desecrate and Detonate Dead is consuming 5 corpses, and the bulk of your damage is coming from Detonate Dead because the skill is a powerhouse that overlaps, has huge corpse added fire damage based on corpse life, and overlapping AoEs. And it hits really, really hard. So what's happening is you're spawning, in your current iteration, 10 corpses every time you proc your cast on crit Desecrate. Then Detonate Dead consumes 5 of them, which only leaves 5 on the ground. You also have like Bone Offering and other things that are going to consume them. So by the time you actually, proc your Volatile Dead, you might get 5, 7, 8 corpses on like single target being consumed, and those corpse explosions don't all overlap because on Volatile Dead the AoE is very small on the corpse explosion. So like for comparison, Detonate Dead might have 26 AoE on the spell and the explosion, where Volatile Dead only has like 13. So the overlap is a lot smaller. Also, your path of building is assuming that everything you explode is a Stone Skin Flare or a Lithomancer, and that's not the case. For those who might not know how this works, when you have the Spectres, it adds the Spectres to the pool of monsters. So if there's 10 different monsters in an area, then you add those 2, so now it's 12, and then it picks at random from those 12 monsters. So you're not just getting the Lithomancers and the Stoneskin Flayers. Though you can definitely tell when you pop them because it's a huge spike in damage. Just want to put that out there.
Immensely. So one of the reasons why you want to run the double cast on crit setup, despite the fact that Vengeance has a fairly low proc rate, is that you're basically running it on a 7 link as opposed to the body, which I'm running on a 5 link, right? Because not only is one of those links dedicated to
adding Volatile Dead to a Detonate Dead,
I don't have a built-in 7 link with that Vengeance. Beyond this, we use a ton of cast from damage taken sets to provide a ton of utility, a ton of damage, even more instant leech, and just whatever else you want. Maybe even Tankiness if you want to run Immortal Call. Others have built similar setups using Necromancer, but they mostly use a Replica Dust On, and it's always, regardless of Replica Dust On or Martyr of Innocence, a single cast on crit setup. Yep. I believe double cast on crit is better. I just like having 2 cocks.
He likes having 2 cocks. You heard it here. Now, I was doing some like math and looking into it a little bit more. I really, really, really do not like losing those 6 sockets. So I was toying around with like Armageddon Brand and Volatile Dead with Detonate Dead, etc. on the 6th link and having to give up things that give me bonus damage. So like I have Arcane Surge in my cast and damage taken links, which gives me 17% more damage. So I'm losing that. I was losing my exposure from Wave of Conviction because I was running out of sockets. I lost my Ball Lightning. I have Divergent Purifying Flame, which gives 5% increased damage taken to enemies on the consecrated ground. And so what I was ended up looking at, so Armageddon Brand specifically was giving me like 2.6 million DPS just being there. Because with Runebinder and 2 brands, each one was DPSing about 1.3 million. And then if I turn that off, turn on my 6th link cast and damage taken setup that I have, I actually gain more damage from that cast and damage taken setup with Volatile Dead specifically than I was losing. Like, I wasn't making up the difference, but I was losing all this utility. So I just want to put that out there. It is good. I'm not convinced it's best. I am a very open-minded person, but I'm not convinced.
Nonetheless, if you're interested in those, you should check those out on PoE Ninja. I know Griff has a forum guide on that particular, and he has several iterations of that build. Between him and Repper, these 2 guys have helped me build this over.
I gotta put this out there, Jungrown. I really appreciate you guys, you giving credit where a lot of work is done. I made this build back in 3.12 Heist, and it's been a blast. This build is nerfed, and it's still really good, but it was so strong before. And regarding Martyr of Innocence and Replica Dusk Dawn, because somebody's going to ask me, this is a question and a debate that has been happening for the last several leagues, Martyr of Innocence is now the best in slot staff. Before, with Replica Dusk Dawn, you could rely on your spell crit being really good with flasks, with Diamond Flask and Bottled Faith, to kind of make up the difference of spell crit. Now, increased critical strike support is actually just a really good support gem for the spell side of things. So if you're using it, you're going to have a capped attack block and capped spell block. So the main advantage of Replica Dusk Dawn kind of goes away. So I just wanted to put that out there for other people.
The course of about a week on stream, and it's been an iterative process, and I think we finally landed on something which is pretty damn close to the perfect build. So the order in which I'll be proceeding from here on is, firstly, I'll be looking at the tree in brief, then looking at the items in very great detail, spending a lot of time here, then the gems, and finally finishing off with the minimum viable core budget needed if you want to get started on this with just as little as possible. So starting with the tree, you'll see a very, very left side focused tree with the Witch Start, and one of the...
So this is something I want to address. Let me pull up this path of building here. All right, so this is the same thing. This is his tree. He's very left side focused. And so if we're looking at the corpse explosion damage on his Detonate Dead, it's 366k on this. I made a few tweaks, so it might be a little higher than what his is. But this is his gear, his build, etc. I made another tree that goes over here. The main advantage is being able to take the Undertaker wheel. You get an extra 30% corpse life since you're scaling the corpse damage more than like spell damage. And you get to generate 2 additional corpses, which is going to help with the cast on crit volatile dead to not be like missing corpses to consume. Or sometimes it'll even just like take corpses away from detonate dead. This helps mitigate that a lot. So what happens is now you have 440k. Okay, it's like almost it's like what, 25% more damage, something like that. You have 4k life, 3k energy shield. So by comparison, you have 4.6k life and 2.4k energy shield. Your total HP is roughly the same, right around 7k. What you lose is the unwavering stance. So you have to get stun immunity elsewhere. This is something I do want to make a point to say. Stun immunity is important on a Cyclone build. What I did do is I gave you different cluster jewels. I gave you the channeling ones that have unwavering focus, which is 40% chance to avoid stuns. These are replaceable. There are other ways to get stun avoidance. This is the nice clean answer to that, because you also get precise focus, which gives a nice amount of crit and crit multi. These are still good damages. Do you know if they changed how... No, the cooldowns are still the same. All right. So I am going to include this path of building link in the description as well. So this is what I would do to the tree with his builds as is.
The big things is that I'm tending to avoid spell damage wherever possible, because while it does affect the spell portions of Volatile Dead and Detonate Dead, spell damage doesn't affect the explosion portion, which is a significant part of my damage. I'm running double cluster setups, and these really help out, one, in giving me a ton of utility through Fortify, things like Arcane Surge, but it also gives me a ton of crit, and the medium cluster is even bigger, but we'll get to those later. The rest of the tree is focused on getting some life. I do run this Thread of Hope here, which enables a bunch of really good nodes. This is a large Thread of Hope. And it's strange, I am pathing through Righteous Army, and this is purely to get the life regen for my minions. Because I do run some Spectres on this build.
Yeah, it helps.
Otherwise, as I kind of level up...
It can be a little awkward when your minions don't recover their life ever. If you're running like a leveled Vitality, it's not too bad. You can also run Convocation if you have the sockets. One of the issues with having the 6-link, like the 2 6-links, is you just have no sockets. But you could run like a Divergent Convocation to give yourself... Like, you get unnerved from it, and it also regenerates life for your minions, which is very nice. Save you 3 passives. You also don't need this power charge. 2 points for 40% increased critical strike chances, bad. Just putting that out there.
Towards 100, I'll be taking these life nodes at the end, and maybe these ones at the very bottom. And that's pretty much what the tree is. It's fairly straightforward. It's all left side centric. Now here's where the meat of the build is, right? Firstly, I'm running a Martyr of Innocence. This is staff. We've gone through this. The Hubris Circlet I'm running is for -9 fire res. Other stats you're looking for are accuracy, life, ES. And then I have the Vengeance enchant. I do believe this is probably the best enchant, but
I disagree with it being the best enchant, simply because your Detonate Dead is what's doing most of your damage. If you got the enchant that has Detonate Dead has a 45% chance to detonate an additional corpse, that counts each circle of your Awakened Spell Cascade. So you go from consuming 5 to anywhere from like 7 to 8 on average, which is a huge, huge damage boost. It also increases your ramp-up time by consuming more corpses.
But other good enchants include the Desecrate enchant, any of the Reservation enchants you might want to run, a Detonate Dead enchant, or a Volatile Dead enchant. These are all pretty good. My chest is...
Desecrate enchant does not do what you think it does. A lot of people misunderstand and say that it's like +3 to... They think it's +3 maximum, but it's only just +3. It doesn't actually do anything, so don't fall for that.
Is a double crit chest. So what I've done here is I've taken a Shaper base and an Elder base. Both of them have the attack crit roll of them. You can do this really easily with the Harvest Reforged crit, and then awaken them together, landed whatever suffix, and then recrafted the prefixes, and finally used a Benchcraft from Gravicius to get that extra life as ES. And this is a really big mod, right? This is how I'm hitting a 2.5k, almost 2.4k ES pool.
That's like super essential. I'm gonna take a moment here. So if you get a chest that has, say, attack crit and increased effective offerings, which is a great mod, by the way, as it increases your block chance and life gain on block from Bone Offering. If you find one of those and it has an open suffix, what you can do is you can do a suffixes cannot be changed craft for 2x, then use Harvest Reforge a crit, and that'll give you the other crit chance. So if you have attack, crit, and offering effect, you do that, you get spell crit. It'll be either T1 or T2. It's a 50-50 chance. I got lucky and I got T1. What you can then do is you can lock suffixes again and then do a reforge with a caster modifier, and this will guarantee that you get an additional curse on your chest. I know you're not using an extra curse in your setup right now, but this opens up the option, and it's not hard to do. If you understand how it works, it's very easy to do. And then from there, you just hope to have an open prefix for the 10% of max life as extra energy shield craft. That's what I would do and did.
My gloves are pretty normal. This is a really flexible slot. I was going to go Hands of the High Templar. I might still do that later on. But for now, these are just rare gloves that help me get resists.
Yep.
And
gloves are very good for dexterity, accuracy, and resistances. Also, the tempo modifiers are all good. All three of them are very good for this build.
there's a bit of extra damage here as well. The boots are Tailwind Elusive boots. These are horrible. I bought these for 2.5x, but they do make me quick. I want to upgrade these as soon as I can, get some more life, get some better movement speed, and get possibly elevated mods on this, because elevated movement is huge. I really want to be breaking that 200 move speed barrier. 200 movement speed feels really damn good.
Mr. Zoomer, I'm gonna start calling you that. Don't get offended. It's okay. I like taking the boot slot to get like resists and stuff. I do have elusive on mine for the extra movement speed. You can also get like +1 max endurance charge synthesized boots, since we generate endurance charges at a very, very quick rate. Those have been like my default in the past. One thing that I know you don't mention, so I'm going to mention it now while we're talking about movement speed, is Divergent Cyclone, which gives you 5% more movement speed. So instead of 30% less movement speed, you get 25% less, So
the Eye of Innocence. This has Anointed Charging Offensive. And if you check this on the tree, this is the node that I'm getting as the anointment. And because I'm always self-hitting because of
this
the
is why we
self-ignite
generate
mechanics that
charges
I've
so
introduced
freaking
earlier,
fast.
You always have permanent frenzy charges, and you always have permanent endurance charges because of this
why
single anointment.
Rock Gut
I don't think any other anointment comes
and
close. It's
Immortal
not something I was
Call
running at the
are
start,
so
and I'm really
good.
glad I found it through the help of, a lot of people yelling at me and telling me, why aren't you taking this shit? So here is one of the most important rings. This has life, and this has the Shaper mod, life gained for each enemy hit by your spells. This is a core mod. You cannot skip this unless you...
Okay, I have to correct a little bit here. The life gain on hit for spells only works for half of what you're doing, because the corpse explosions are not spells. Without the Vitality Watcher's Eye, in high density areas like simulacrums, delirious maps, tough monsters and like expeditions and stuff, you will end up killing yourself because you deal so many ignites that you're not actually mitigating. Most of the time, it's not going to matter. I'm going to put that out there. Most of the time, it will be fine. But sometimes, you will kill yourself. Just keep that in mind. Also, 15 life gain on hit for your spells. When you're taking 12.5 fire damage to your life, it doesn't feel that good. So you should probably keep that in mind as well. You want more life gain on hit for spells. So maybe if you have like 2 rings with that, it might feel okay.
You have a Vitality, life gain on hit, Watcher's Eye. Also, the non-channeling skills have minus cost is really great. Having 2 of these crafted mods lets me skip Replica Conqueror's efficiency, and each jewel socket I can get is something like 15 to 20% more DPS. It's really, really great to have rare jewels.
Yeah, rare jewels are
I'm
great.
super starved on jewel sockets, and you'll see why later.
Nope. Also, regarding the prefix crafts, I know, and I've mentioned this to you, so I hope you've tried it and found how amazing it is. You can get the 6% of damage recouped as mana over 4 seconds. That mod will just sustain your mana. You combine that with the attack leech you get from Fuel the Fight, you will not have any mana issues, because we deal so much damage to ourselves. So I would do like 1 of each, personally.
This unset ring is big. The other thing this build always is really starved on, because I'm running double cock, is sockets. So sockets are prime real estate. You
Even
really want to have
without
this here.
the
I am
double
putting my
cock,
Aspect of the Spider
sockets
here.
are a problem.
It could have fit here as well instead of that stupid Herald of Thunder. Shouldn't have exalted that. But otherwise, again, just a minus cost, some life, some resistances. My belt here is a Torrent's Reclamation. This is completely optional. I
Super
like it because
optional.
it gives me more movement speed. Other things can include a Headhunter, a rare belt. This is a great slot to look for things like Dexterity, Life, and maybe running a Stitch Advice to help get even more resistances. The flash setup is super weird. And no, I'm not trolling. I am running double Rot Gut. And the reason I do this is because then I can have increased effect rolled on this from, I believe, an Enkindling Orb. And then as I'm using one Rot Gut, the other one recharges almost instantly. And then once that one runs out, the other one goes off. I'm also
takes
running a
3
Rumi, this gets me to
seconds.
max block, and then I'm running a Diamond Flask because I'm poor. This should be a Bottled Faith. Bottled Faith is the best flask. It's not that expensive, honestly. You want to run it. Finally, I do run an Enduring Mana Flask, and this is
You won't
only
need to
necessary
run
for
that if
bosses.
you have
I
recouped
could
mana.
use a Replica Conqueror's Efficiency as well in this build and drop this entirely, but so far the only place where I need to use this is bosses. I think it's really, really great. You can also roll other utility mods on this, like Cannot Be Shocked and stuff like that, or Shock Cleanse, and that can be really helpful. The jewels are real weird. Kitava's Teachings. Because there's always corpses on the ground, I always have this regen. I have a relatively large unreserved pool of mana. You can see here it's almost
Kitava's
20%,
Teaching
right?
is
It's over 20%.
fine.
And because of that, I actually go.
But
my
I'd
mana
rather
goes
have a
down
rare
quite
jewel.
a bit, and then it goes all the way back up, but it never hits the bottom. And part of the reason
that's
why
me
that's the case is because of Kitava's Teachings. So Kitava's Teachings, basically every second you regen 5% of mana, 5% of life with this build.
Yeah.
We basically negate the downside because we're always consuming corpses. Of course, if you get hit right away at the start of a map or something, hypothetically, it goes through your layers of block, some white mob just kills you. It's probably a Roa, you'll die. This large cluster here, so this is a Spell Large cluster. I do get Arcane Surge on here, I don't think it's necessary. None of the mods here are really that important. I do, however, enjoy having Essence Rush, and this gives me ES Leech, and I don't think I have any other source of ES Leech on my tree.
We can also get ES Leech. Essence Rush is a very nice node. So you can, if you take this route, you can always take 1 point, get ES Leech there. Also, you have access to this notable. Mine specifically has Energy Shield Leech and 10% ES on this node. So like you can get it there. You can do Essence Rush. I personally am a big fan of the Conjured Wall Mage Hunter for the 10% spell block. And then like you could put like Essence Rush in the back if you wanted to. Whatever. It's fine. You get Arcane Surge here. What I don't like about this specific mod, Arcane Adept, I would rather have Arcane Heroism. So you have the Arcane Surge when it matters. Because it's like 10% chance to get it on hits against a rare unique or something like that. I'd rather have that one, but it's fine. But it goes away after 4 seconds. You have to like stop and then start spinning again to get it going. It's just little things.
But most importantly, you want to get an 8 passive and 2 sockets. This medium cluster is huge. Wrapped in Flame, the single
Wrapped in
best cluster
Flame.
mod you can get. You
Get it.
have Permanent Ash
Yes.
because you're always burning, because
Yes.
of the self-ignite of this mechanic. The Cannot Be Chilled doesn't matter, and then does give you some increased fire damage, and then Cooked Alive is just 5% more damage, which is pretty solid for a cluster jewel.
This should be Cremator. Wrapped in Flame, Cremator. Cremator says enemies that you ignite are destroyed on kill. Gets rid of corpses. Also 30% increased fire damage. So it's similar to Cooked Alive as far as damage is concerned. But you need to get Cremator to deal with corpses. You're not using Doppelganger's guys anymore, man.
The 15% chance ignite doesn't matter at all. So this is basically an ideal type rare jewel. It's a 3 mod. It would be great to have a 4 mod. But do you see that implicit? That's a harvest implicit of 1% damage recouped as mana.
Yes,
and that helps a lot
1%.
with your mana regen as well, because again, you're always damaging yourself through Eye of Innocence. Hot-Headed is
You want to get the Ringcraft.
beautiful. This is just straight up
7
20%
times
movement
more.
speed all the time. I don't actually need to increase attack speed because I'm a Necromancer. Necros never struggle.
Okay, so I need to do like a small clarification here. With Martyr of Innocence, you will still not be attack speed capped, even with the Hot-Headed. Okay? Because you can get up to 15.14 attack speed to cover your cast on crit rotation between Desecrate and Detonate Dead. And you're only going to get up to like 12.5 to 13 depending on other sources of attack speed. So more attack speed is still good, especially since action speed increases do not affect channeling skills attack rate. Cyclone does not actually get an increase to its attack rates from things like Tailwind. Even though it shows up in Path of Building, it's a trap. It doesn't actually do anything. It's just movement speed. So it is still good. And there is a 200% increased attack and cast speed cap on Corpse Pact that you will reach and have all the time.
Struggle with hitting attack speed thresholds because of Corpse Pact. I managed to get a Corrupted Blood implicit here. This cost me 40 chaos. I don't know if there's any other cheap ones.
Probably not
the Watcher's
anymore.
Eye is actually core to this build, which I hate saying. But do you see that ES gain for each enemy hit while affected by Discipline? That mod is what helps us have ES. If you don't have this, you will have no energy
I heard you
shield.
like to have
if you
energy
do have
shield.
this, you have permanent instant leech energy shield. You need the first mod. The second mod isn't core. I have it on here for now because I bought the Jill for 9x, and it's just hanging out. I don't really know if I want to keep it. I might go for something like Discipline plus
Bro, keep it.
Precision because that'd give me a lot more damage because of how little multi I currently have. I've gone over the Thread of Hope already. Transcendent Flesh is another huge jewel, right? You see if I take it out, it's 13.8% less. So this is giving me something like 50%
Yeah, that's
more
a
DPS.
that's a really nice
And
jewel
so far I put
since
it
you're
down
traveling
here on
down
the
there.
tree. The rest of my medium
Unfortunately,
clusters are just crit clusters. I want to get pressure points because that's really, really solid.
with the tree that I adjusted it to, there's no spot for it, but in that spot it is really good.
Quick Getaway is not bad. There's some other decent mods like
Yeah, there's a lot of good crit jewels. I would
the one
like
that gives
to
you
also
25%
see
multi
you
and,
run
or
a
25%
curse
crit
jewel
and 10% multi.
with
There's
Evil
a lot
Eye
of good different crit jewels you can
and
get, and these are flexible, and this is
Wish
where you
for
could
Death.
save a lot of the cost. Glorious.
Right? Evil Eye and Wish for Death. Hello. Yeah, get Culling Strike, and then you get Permanent Blind. I'm running a Flame ability on hit Ring, so everything gets blinded. And since I'm not using Unwavering Stance, that's Unwavering Stance, then I also get the ability to avoid 50% of incoming attacks, which is really good.
Vanity.
I'd like to see
Again,
you run
a lot
that.
of my builds tend to run this. It's Corrupted Soul, gives us a lot of ES.
This is also
this is
a
one
core
of the best
piece.
usages of it possible
Should
because
be
we
talked
have instant
about
ES
more
and life leech, right?
when talking
So
about
this
the
is
essential
like pure,
items.
pure value. There's no like reduced energy leech rate or anything.
Because what's happening is it's also splitting your incoming damage that you deal to yourself between ES and life, which is letting your recovery do more. Very important to have this. Like if I had to say, hey, you need these specific items to make this build functional, I would say you need Martyr, Eye of Innocence, you need a source of self-ignition from either Replica Reckless Defense or Sunspite Boots. And then you need to have the ES on hit and the Glorious Vanity. Those are like the things you have to have for the build to even feel good. And then a 6-link.
Something like that. And then Replica Restless Defense is core. This gives us a 10% chance to be ignited. The other ones I don't really care about, but the 10% chance to be ignited, without this build will not function.
Yep.
Without this, you'd
Also,
have to run
thanks for
something
making
like
this 5
Moko's
Chaos
Embrace,
Jewel,
or you
1
have to run the
Exalt,
Sundance
lol.
or the Faded Sundance boost. I'm not really sure. And then this last large cluster jewel. These two mods are great. Field of Fight actually gives you a decent amount of
Perfect.
leech, despite the fact that we're a spellcaster build.
Yep.
Because we have so much damage from Martyr of Innocence being just this insane staff, the mana leech actually does matter. And then Overlord is what gives us Fortify all the time. We don't have space to run Fortify support. Having permanent Fortify is huge. It's just 20% more tankiness. The skill gems also need some explaining.
Yeah, the jewel is very, very good. I used to have people just get it on the Overlord, on like a Megalomaniac. But now with the mana changes, getting Fuel the Fight actually works really, really nicely. I figured this out last league. I had a Fuel the Fight Overlord large cluster jewel on I was doing a double cock Bladefall Blade Blast Scion self-ignite with all these same mechanics, but with Bladefall Blade Blast because that was OP at the time. And I was using that cluster jewel as well, and I realized I could do like no regen maps because I had this mana leech from Fuel the Fight. And I carried that concept over this league for the builds because of the mana changes, and it just really, really helps a lot. It is expensive. You can also get another suffix notable, and that would save you 2 passes, but they're like 10x, so, you know, do with that as you will.
This setup is fairly straightforward in terms of the main setup with Cyclone, Desecrate, Detonate Dead. The aura setup I'm running is Vitality, Precision, Discipline. Again, I need to run both these for the Watcher's Eye mods. And Precision gives us a ton of accuracy and crit chance, and you need to hit accuracy cap. Because unlike previous iterations of my double cock build, which ran Ephagon, this just gets a ton of accuracy because I want to run Eye of Innocence. Flame Dash is here, I don't have space.
Yeah, the only thing I would add here is I really like Herald of Ash. It's not like essential, but it's nice to look. I do have a nice circle ring that has +1 max endurance charge on it with fire damage and buff effect. The buff effect doesn't do much. It's like kind of diminished in its returns because it only affects fire spell damage. But with the +1 max endurance charge, I really liked it. End rant there. Herald of Ash is still a nice damage boost because the spell damage still does a significant amount. Also, MTX explosions.
The Raised Spectre I'm running is in my ring socket number 2. And you want to get 1 Stoneskin Flayers and 2 Lithomancers. Both of these specters can be found in Primeval Ruins, which is around, I think, 200-ish depth and onward. It's where you find all and those cities. And these specters have 800% increased life, which is gigantic. It really spikes your damage like crazy. My damage literally doubled when I picked up these specters finally, and a ton of people made fun of me for not having them previously. My Volatile Dead setup, this is
a note again on the specters. They are very, very good, and it depends on like what content you're doing. So like if you're just doing regular maps or Cirrus or anything that has a high mob pool, they aren't that impactful, but you can like see when you actually hit one, and it just does a huge amount of chunk damage to like the boss or whatever. But for something like Cortex, where there are no monsters in the Spectre pool, you only have the Bone Stalkers or whatever, the base monster, right? So then you get Lithomancer, Stoneskin Flare, and whatever the base is, and that's it. You will freaking delete Cortex with this build if you're using the Spectres and Detonate Dead. You just instant death. It's wonderful. But under normal circumstances, like Cirrus and stuff, you're not getting that many of the explosions from those corpses.
a bit more flexible. This could be a ton of things. I do believe this is the best setup though, right?
Inspiration is bad. Why are you using it? It takes almost 5 seconds to get your maximum charges for that. I mentioned this before. You can use Hypothermia, which is like 30% more damage, which is more than Inspiration already, since we chill everything with Corpse Pact. You can use Inspiration. You can use Increased Critical Damage, which is better or worse depending on how much crit multi you already have, but is at the very least comparable. And then if you don't care about it being able to ignite, you can use Elemental Focus, and that's like the most damage without going to something stupid like Conk Effect. I wouldn't do Conk Effect because it reduces Vengeance AoE, and we just don't want to deal with that. But I would go with Hypothermia personally.
Right. You want to be running Awakened Spell Cascade on both. And don't worry, the Awakened Spell Cascade doesn't intrude too much upon how many corpses are being generated, because this only triggers every 0.8-ish seconds.
You don't really need
crit,
it
it's triggering once every,
on the Volatile Dead.
Somewhere around there. This is the ball line.
You don't really need Awakened on the Volatile Dead. You do need it on the Detonate Dead, though. Because Volatile Dead is going to be able to consume more corpses than you're going to be able to put out anyways. Not that it's bad, because it's still more damage than regular Spell Cascade, but if you're like trying to prioritize what to get for the build, put the second Awakened Spell Cascade lower on the spectrum.
And you cast some damage.
Lower on the total.
This is great. You get a ton of life gain on hit, and you get Culling Strike from this, and then Combustion, because I have a lot of flat added fire. This is one.
See the other medium cluster tool. You can get the Culling Strike there. Saves another gem socket. It's nice.
The really important utility setups. It gives us a ton of defenses. I might look to add an Immortal Call at this point. The other cast some damage taken setup
add
is
Immortal Call!
Assassin's Mark and Wave of Conviction. So this is giving us 1, Bone Offering giving us block. 2, Assassin's Mark is not only giving us the curse that we need, but quality on Assassin's Mark also gives you power charge on hit.
You're welcome.
This is great to have permanent power charges on bossing. And the Wave of Conviction is purely to apply exposure. I also know I'll get a ton of questions about the config, because it looks like I checked off a lot of boxes.
There's a lot of boxes to check off.
So this Corpse Life is one based on a level 84 mob, with those 2 specters that I've chosen, with Necromancer giving 50% more life to corpses. The power charges I've mentioned come from Assassin's Mark. Frenzy and Endurance charges come from Charging Offensive, that anointment. Don't know why that's there. Fortify is coming from the large cluster. Yep. Tailwind and Elusive are coming from my boots. Of course, we're always leeching, and of course, we're always leeching Energy Shield, because we have that on our cluster, and we have this from Eye of Innocence.
We're also dealing damage.
I'm putting about 5 nearby corpses, because generally you'll spawn some corpses and consume most of them. Yes, we're ignited
It only matters
permanently.
if there's one.
Yes, I've crit recently. Of course I have. I'm channeling because I'm using Cyclone. I've blocked recently because I have maximum block. I spawned a corpse recently because I'm using Desecrate. I've
You've cast a
consumed
spell
corpse
recently
my main
because you
skills are
should be
Voltov
using
Dead and
Immortal
Detonate
Call.
Dead. And this number is
Also
really
playing
high,
Dash.
but if you actually look at the math, it's about there. Basically, though, the attack speed will infinitely go up until you run out of mana or until you run out of bosses to hit.
Until you hit 200%.
Acid Spider is always capped out on bosses. I think this is totally reasonable.
They capped
and then
it.
Slipstream's active, and this is here.
Back
The only conflicts I have checked here are Ignite,
I wanna say
but
it
the
was
enemy will be
3.11.
shocked
I don't remember,
and
though.
chilled because of what Necromancer does with corpses. And then finally we have Ash from the medium cluster jewel with fire damage on it. The minimum viable set has a bunch of different options put in now. So now I have a Crown of the Inward Eye and Doppelganger Eyes, and these have
I
replaced
don't think
two
Crown
really
of the
good rares.
Inward Eye is very
And as a
good.
result of running Doppelganger Eyes, which is something I actually did with this build for a lot of the process of playing it. One, you have corpse
Yeah, I just
deletion,
find-
so you never have to worry about
You
things
should
like
have corpse
porcupines
deletion
or
from
enemy
Cremator.
bosses having detonate dead, stuff like that. And two, it really helps you hit crit cap. This makes
It is
hitting
very
crit
good,
cap
though,
much,
to
much,
get your
much
crit.
more forgiving. And because you're so easily hitting crit cap, you no longer need a 6 link. See, I only have a 5 link here, and I don't run increased critical strikes, and yet my crit rate is still basically 100%.
Yeah, my low budget version of this has always been like, yeah, you need at least a tabula so you can use increased critical strikes as your 6th link so that you can make sure you're capped on crit. Doppelganger Guy's 5 link should work fine too. They're both very glass cannon, obviously.
Otherwise, you want to put in a Namahu sign now because you probably
This-
won't be able to craft that Shaper Ring and have it have reasonably good mods. Maybe you will, who knows. But a Namahu sign gives you a ton of recovery, and this is sort
It's
of
also
the
really
cheapest
good for
option.
leveling.
Bunch of rares with, you know, life, ES, resist, nothing else. You still want to run a double rock gut. This Watcher's Eye now only has the discipline mod. And then everything else is just slightly shittier. Basically though, the core changes happen here. And you'll see that I'm actually running on a double 5 link this time because I understand that the 6 link cost drives us up the wall. I do believe the total cost of this budget setup would be somewhere around the 5 exalt range, just because the Watcher's Eye should be around 2 to 3 exalts. Now the prices obviously change. I have
The prices obviously changed. Now they're like 7 to 8 at minimum. Whoops. Budget boots would be Sunspite if you don't want to spend an Exalt on Replica Reckless Defense. Sunspites are very nice. They give life regen while ignited. They give extra movement speed while ignited. So if you find that you're like a little short and you can't quite afford like the Replica Reckless Defense, there's like 2C boots that you can just use temporarily. Also Stampedes, if you have the Replica Jewel, Stampede boots give a nice like static movement of 50%, which feels really good on Cyclone. Obviously you want to move away from them eventually, but they are like very good starter boots. I started with them, and you can anoint them with something like Battle Ruse. Battle Ruse gives 10% of damage taken from hits, recouped as mana over 4 seconds. Like, that's really good. You can put Essence Sap, Keklol, on them to help with the mana if you need to. Just do Battle Ruse. It's also cheap.
no say over that. Trade is really dead, so things can shift instantly.
And they did.
Nonetheless, the damage is still really good. I think it's probably close to around, probably about 7 to 8 million because of you also have the spell portions of these spells hitting, not just the explosion and generic damage hitting. And a big reason that this is the case is because, again, your Spectres have a ton of health
Yeah,
still.
dude,
You're
I
still
sold
running that
mine
Raise Spectre
today.
stuff. You're still running those Lithomancers
80
and
Exalts.
Stone Skin Flares, and this helps out a ton.
Because it had Anger
I
Crit
truly
multi.
believe this is one of the strongest builds this league,
This
straight up. I think it's
is
so
a
well-rounded. There's
very
basically
good
nothing
build.
weak about it. It's really, really competitive, right? One of the biggest things that's difficult this league is getting a really solid amount of movement speed. And we're achieving this through self
He's gonna give me flack, right? Because I don't have a ton of movement speed on mine. I could. I just don't. I rely on like Leap Slam attack speed, which is kind of amusing. Yeah, I bought mine the other day for like 18 exalts. And then today after all of this blew up, I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna throw it on the market for just on a whim while I'm doing other things. And it sold for 80x in like 10 minutes. I'm like, oh my god. This is crazy. Whatever.
Ignite. It's giving us a ton of other benefits as well. You know, Leech, triggering Vengeance, cast when damage taken. But the biggest thing is movement speed. And honestly, if you look around the landscape right now, how many builds are having this level of survivability, this level of damage, this level of recovery, right? Insane recovery, and this level of speed. I don't know. You tell me, but it sure looks better than self-cast Forbidden, right?
I agree with you so much, Jungrown. I don't know if I could say it better myself. This build is so well-rounded. And when I write guides and I create builds, that's one of my goals. I'm a very much I want to play one character. I want that one character to do everything, even if it's not the best. at that one specific thing. So when I landed on this back in Heist and started putting it together and developing, I'm like, oh my god, this build can just do everything, has good damage, has great survivability. The survivability, I should put this out there, the survivability will suck until you get to like the certain threshold of gear, because it's always been well, we have the DPS because you get tons of crit and crit multi from the staff nodes and the item, like the core items. And then everything else just is to help you like not die. Things like the Glorious Vanity, the Watcher's Eye, the Overlord Cluster Jewel, right? To get the Fortify uptime permanently. Like that's, and getting life. And the goal really is like you want to get to like 7k total ES and life with Fortify and like 3 or 4 endurance charges. And that should feel good. One other thing I want to point out, he doesn't mention it. I don't know what he uses, but your Pantheon has a lot of effects that are like, if you've been hit, you get this. So most notably, the small Pantheon, the minor Pantheon for Grethkel, is 1% increased physical damage reduction per hit up to 5%. So you get a free 5% physical damage mitigation from that minor Pantheon, plus 3 endurance charges. I mean, that's 17% flat physical mitigation. You can take an endurance charge on the tree for 2 points. I would do that at high levels. Like when I get my my Overlord Jewel to have a suffix notable and I get 2 free passives all of a sudden, I'm going to put them into the extra endurance charge because we get huge generation on those. And it also increases the duration and uptime of Immortal Call, which is also very important, in my opinion. That helps a lot with just like tanking things like Shaper Slam, right? You're fighting against Shaper and he goes to slam. You don't need to dodge. You just press Immortal Call and he does almost no damage to you. The build is very tanky. One of the, there are a couple of downsides. Because all of the recovery is very reliant on being in combat, you are very susceptible to like random degens. The build is also very susceptible to chaos damage, so you want to make sure you get enough chaos resistance so where that doesn't really matter anymore. But damage over time effects can be kind of rough if you're not in combat actively, as they will kill you very quickly with the low amount of actual regen the build has for sustain. That said, when you're in combat, you're running delirious maps, you're running simulacrums. This is a fantastic simulacrum farmer. It's fun. You can get 5 to 6 stacks of rewards every wave pretty easily. It's nice. It's really, really nice. Hey, Jungrown, thank you for putting this out there. This is like my baby for builds lately, and having somebody with a bigger voice than mine putting this out there, it's really cool. I appreciate it. I do appreciate you also accrediting the work that I've put into this, and hopefully you'll find this constructive. That is my goal. I want you to be able to make the build as good and strong as possible. So thank you. It's been a nice little ride. Let me check my notes, make sure there wasn't anything like I missed. I did make a path of building based on your path of building link. I think you've already seen that, but I'm going to just kind of show it here. So in the bottom left, you have your original tree where you can just kind of like do apples to apples comparisons. And I'm going to put this in the description of the video as well. And this is what I would do to your tree. You get more damage and you have the same total life and energy shield. And then in the notes section, I have a block of text you can kind of go through. Most of this is stuff I've already said in the video, but you know, it works. All right. And that is that. Once again, Jungrown, thank you so much. And guys, we're going to insert a catchy phrase here and peace out.